Welcome to America Uncanceled, but we're here in CPAC, Mexico, day 2. It's been spectacular, and we can't wait to introduce our next guest. Matt, who's with us right here?
So the host of the Sarah Carter podcast
Very
is, God, that's complicated, Sarah Carter.
Sarah Carter. It's easy. It's easy.
Apparently,
I
so
wanna-
excited she's
to
a
be here in
driver too.
Mexico.
Did you hear
I
she
want
was
to
a
get
driver?
right into this. Okay, so Jack Posobiec had really
Another easy name.
uncharitable things to say about our excursion
How dare he?
out into La Ciudad
Oh, really?
Ayer. That's a little Spanish. And you were the driver for a period of time.
Yes.
And he was softly mocking your driving skills. And I said to Jack, I thought he was way over the line and that I was going to give you a chance to explain the tough situation you were put into in that big white SUV.
Right.
With
so
all of us in it.
it is a ginormous SUV. It's probably
Yeah.
the biggest of the biggest SUVs. And we had security with us.
You sound like Donald Trump right now.
Right.
It was one of the largest SUVs.
It was the largest. it was ginormous. I just have to throw it out there. But I'm driving in these little small roads in Mexico City, and we were actually going to a very important, very special place, dear to our hearts. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just start with the driving, though. I could not let anyone else drive the car there. Rosie is our friend who helps run a shelter here for human trafficking victims. We had to have privacy. So only one person could know where the location of the shelter was. So everybody else had to get blindfolded, which was great because Mercedes and Matt and everybody in the SUVs were blindfolded, and we had to drive through these small little
We had to
roads.
drive. No, she was driving, kicks out the driver from the front seat.
Yes, that was kind of fun.
She's like, you got to move. I'm the one that's going to drive. And the security guard's like, what? What do
What?
we
It's
Yeah,
very strange to be blindfolded in the largest SUV in the world. and
Yeah,
have
in Mexico City,
have
where
the host of the Sarah Carter podcast say things like, I don't think we're going to be able to get through here. If we get through here, I think we're just going to be stuck. And we have blindfolds on. We're like, how bad is it out there?
I mean, literally, the road was as wide as the SUV.
Yeah,
and there
that's
were
true.
people
I
coming
can do the
towards
math.
me, and
Yeah.
there were people coming towards me, and I had to avoid people, cars, keep you all alive, and make it to the shelter
so to
in
Jack
time.
Posobiec,
But Jack
way,
is
way
wrong.
over the line on your criticisms.
Yeah, way over the line because Jack was not driving. I was driving.
I think he was jealous. I think he
I do,
wanted
too.
to drive.
he
right.
did.
It was
he
like
wanted
a
to
James
show his
Bond
skills.
moment.
Yeah.
All right, so
definitely.
now Mercy, take us to the more serious part of our interaction.
I know,
Right.
I know. Actually, we've been having an incredible time here in CPAC, Mexico. Sarah, what's been your impression so far? I mean, it's the first we've done here in this beautiful country. What are your thoughts?
Oh, for me, this is a dream come true. Really, being here at CPAC Mexico with so many wonderful people and conservatives actually standing up for values that I believe are important to everyone in the Western Hemisphere. You know, this is, I think, the beginning of something very special and beautiful. We see it spreading across our hemisphere in Guatemala. We hear people, we have people here from Paraguay. We have people here from Brazil, from all over the Americas that are fighting for freedom, that actually believe the future and the destiny of the Western Hemisphere is liberty and freedom. And we've seen the tragedy. I think Mercedes and Matt, you both are, I think, the biggest fighters against this, against the rise of communism in our hemisphere, and not only in our hemisphere, but in the United States. We've seen this Marxist ideology, this socialist ideology spread, and it's contaminating the ideals, the liberty, the basic foundation of what our nation was founded on. So to see that here in Mexico City, and to know that we're in an area that really, I mean, is not, let's be honest, we have AMLO here, right? I mean, it's not as inviting. We're taking a lot of chances here. People are coming here, they're speaking freely, but there is a tension as well, right? I mean, so for me, this is a blessing. I think this is the beginning of better things to come. I think we're going to see CPAC spread across the Americas. Like I said, I believe Central America. I hope Guatemala is next. I hope the Dominican Republic, Paraguay, other places throughout the Americas. And we're going to build a strong foundation with partnerships that are going to take our nations forward, not backwards. We're going to build strong economies, and we are going to persevere and push forward.
I don't know if we're going to show the short conversation
Right.
I had on War Room this morning, but I think we should. And the question is this: are you creating a global movement? Nah, we don't. We're not globalists. We don't really want to do that.
Right.
But you look at Davos. You look at all that evil and all that money and all that rot that they're pushing now through companies and through Larry Fink and BlackRock and all this stuff. And we have to have a counter to Davos. So as we go around the world and we have all these CPACs everywhere, there's only 52 weeks in a year. You know, how many countries, I had so many people walking up to me last night at the dinner saying, would you do one in my country? There's a lot of countries in Central and South America. We probably can't do everything. But we really ought to think about getting the good guys together in a global way, in an international way, to push back on these creeps that run Davos.
Oh, I absolutely
What do you think of that.
Oh, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. I mean, we've seen what's happened at the World Economic Forum. We've seen what's happened across the globe with the influence of I would like to say people that are like ideologically bent on a globalism that's much different than what we're discussing right now. And before it used to be...
Theirs destructive.
Theirs is absolutely
ours is
destructive.
Building up human freedom.
Yeah,
Theirs
we're
is
talking-
taking it away.
Well, we are a beacon of light for the rest of the world. Our nation has always stood firm as being a place where other people from all over the world were a melting pot. We are a melting pot of people from everywhere, whether you're from Mexico or Cuba or Guatemala or France or Belgium or England. We are this beautiful beacon of light, a melting pot that believes in individuals, that believes in the right of the individual, that believes in freedom and aspirations. We stand for something that is so beautiful and unique. And I think what we've seen now is this push towards globalism where anything goes as long as it's better for the whole, right? But who's
and
making
controlled,
that?
Yes.
Who's
controlled.
who's
Controlled
making
by a
that
small number of
determination?
people. That's right.
Who's making that determination? Is it who determines who gets vaccinated? Is it who determines who to teach your children? Is it the person that tells you, well, you know what, you no longer can be involved in your school affairs because your individual rights are now affecting the whole and the way that the one or the small or the few believe your children should be taught. And I think we've seen it in obviously in America with what happened with Governor Glenn Youngkin and what happened in Fairfax County and Loudoun County when parents stood up and said, well, wait a minute. I mean, this is about the individual. This is about my right as a parent. And we're seeing that in every other nation as well.
That's a great point, because one of the things that we've learned as we've traveled to these different CPACs, CPAC Brazil being one of those cases, now CPAC Mexico, they are being threatened by this gender ideology, the indoctrination of our children, the basically a breakdown of crime being obviously and violence an issue. So you've been traveling across Latin America. You've been to several of these nations. I think you, not only was she our driver through these small streets of Mexico City, or these narrow streets of Mexico City, but you were in a helicopter overlooking these cocaine plants, correct? I mean, tell us about what is your drive, Sarah? Why are you putting your life at risk, really, to tell the story of what's happening in these countries?
Because I believe we have to be able to deliver the truth to the American people and to the people all over the world, frankly, for that matter. There are people that want to get the truth out, and there are few people willing to tell it and willing to stand up and do that job. They are out there. There are people out there that are willing to do this. For me personally, it's for my children. It's a way of giving back and saying, like, when I'm no longer here, I still believe that fighting for what the foundation, for our Constitution, for what we believe in, for that beautiful, beautiful foundation that makes our nation so strong and it makes it the envy of other nations or the aspiration of other nations. I believe that's worth fighting for. And it's our hemisphere that we need to be paying attention to now, folks, because we have seen our adversaries here. We've seen adversaries like China. We have seen Russians. We have seen, this is not just about the United States. This is about protecting all of us for future generations and for our children and for our neighbors to the south. And I think that's part of the reason why I do it.
People ask,
and I like to drive fast.
People, and you've been fabulous with your time, generous with your time to come with us to so many of these CPACs. You probably have been to more of them with us than anyone. And people keep asking me, what was your theory? Like, what was your strategy? And I'm not so sure we really always had a strategy other than
Right.
you're trying to respond to a need. And I will just say to all of our supporters and all the activists and everybody mostly in America, I would just let you know, like, I wish you could have been with us as you heard these stories.
Right.
Sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish, sometimes a mixture of both, right?
Right.
Trying to express how sad it is to be a parent in a country that doesn't allow complete freedom of expression, where you could be jailed or lose your job. And America's becoming more like that than moving away from
Right.
that. And they so appreciate, whether we like it or not, America plays the biggest role on the globe. We have so
Absolutely.
much credibility. If we would just use it for good things, instead of pushing abortion on these people and gender confusion on these people and empowering the cartels, if we could just use it for the good things like happened under the Trump administration, if
Right.
we could get back to those days, it would bring so much more joy to people.
Absolutely. And empowering the cartels. You brought up so many great points. Part of the reason I spend so much time at the border is because of the humanitarian crisis there. The children that are being trafficked, we saw that, Mercy, you and I and Matt, when we were at this home for children that had been rescued from human traffickers. And when you go there and you realize that our government under the Biden administration is perpetuating that with the drug cartels, is part of that, is forcing our law enforcement officials to be part of that deadly cycle where hundreds of billions of dollars are being put into the pockets of these massive cartel organizations, these narco traffickers, and we're doing nothing about it to stop it. Nothing. And children are suffering, people are suffering, and by the way, the American public is suffering, and so will the Western Hemisphere, because the people that are coming to our country, as well as to countries like Guatemala, Brazil, Colombia, these are people from all over the world. We do not have access to their records. Neither do our law enforcement officials. So we don't even know who many of them are.
Right.
And they disappear into the fabric of our nations. And, we're just playing a game of Russian roulette.
Yeah.
It'll only be a matter of time before someone targets our country. And then what? Who is going to pay the price for that?
And let me say one thing that you really brought home as we visited the shelter. This idea of anonymous people with no paperwork,
Right.
and pushing that along into America by accepting them into our country, no paperwork, no documentation, no story. They become further victimized.
The
'Cause
children
they have
in particular.
no standing.
The
They have
Jew-
no
yeah.
security. This is
Yeah.
not a good thing for our
No.
country. It's not a good thing for these kids, and it's not a good thing for the cartels that are benefiting from the fact that we're not holding anyone accountable.
And I can't tell you, just being there with those girls ages 9 to 17, the vast majority of them, I mean, those are the ages of our children, of our girls.
Right.
I think, I got to say, it really hit home. It hit home in so many ways that there could be such evil in this world. And then you have the leftist government here in Mexico trying to take away their home.
Right.
Which is an outrage. And I think that it really shows that we have to remember that when we talk about these things, there's real people behind this.
And what's the
there's
Biden
real children
administration's
behind this.
answer to what you're talking about?
Right.
It's gender confusion.
Gender
It's
confusion,
we'll get you
yeah.
on birth control. We'll get you your abortion. I mean, this is their answers to these kids.
No, instead of holding accountable,
The human trafficker, yes.
yeah, instead of holding the human traffickers accountable and punishing them and making sure that this stops by actually following the laws that are already in place, our administration, the Biden administration, has perpetuated it. Instead, it's given power to the traffickers. This is the reason why we're seeing people in the cartels now being released here in Mexico. We're seeing people being released all across, like look at Colombia right now, and the fact that they're not even going to eradicate the cocaine anymore in Colombia. The big fight is like we're going to protect our rainforest by not eradicating the cocaine. That's a lie. That is a lie. It is because they are influencing the cartels and the narcos again to rise up to power. And this is a war that we are all going to have to face because our children as well, their children are dying. Our children are dying. And when is someone going to stand up and say, no more? This is unacceptable. I'm not afraid of you. I will challenge you. And as a parent, I will fight for the life of my child. When you think of the 107,000 people that have died in the United States in 2021 over that last fiscal year, of opioid epidemic, the majority of which was fentanyl, which was precursor chemicals provided by the Chinese to the Mexican cartels. And you think about how that plays a role in irregular warfare in our hemisphere and what we've allowed to happen, we should be ashamed of ourselves. We should be ashamed of ourselves, and we should stand up every single day and fight it, because our children deserve that. Our countries deserve that. Mexico deserves that. Guatemala deserves that. Ecuador deserves that. Brazil deserves that. We deserve to be the envy of the world. We have everything in the Western Hemisphere. Everything you can imagine. Beauty, culture, everything. I mean, and economics and hard workers. Why are we suffering?
Because socialism destroys everything.
Right.
It destroys beauty. It destroys human joy. And why does it do
Innovation.
all this? It does all this because what did Eduardo say last night in his speech? It's a movement that doesn't stop. And its aim is not to have human joy and fulfillment. Its aim is power.
It is. It's power, and it's like a cancer.
It's a cancer.
It's a cancer because once it divides the family, once it takes the children away from the mother and father, once the state takes over the system, you become enslaved to a system. And to get it back, that's almost impossible.
So why don't we fight now?
Let's do it.
Let's
I'm
do
ready.
it. Let's do it.
I'm ready to fight.
Well, Sarah Carter, it's always an honor to have you with us.
Oh my
We
gosh.
love you. You're part of the CPAC family.
Oh, I am. I love you all.
And we want to
She
thank.
loves me too. I just want
I
you to
do.
know she
I do.
does.
Well,
And let me tell you, she really needs a
partially.
reality show on like Sarah Carter, the real James Bond. That's what I would call it.
I would really love to do that.
Let's
It
do
would be
it.
funny too. It wouldn't be like all,
Oh, believe me, after we saw you drive, it would be very funny.
It'd be kind of comical.
You
Yeah.
see what I do a favor for these folks. I don't even crash the car, and I still get thrown under the
We
bus.
came out alive, and we're just so happy to be here in Mexico City for CPAC Mexico. We hope we're giving you a great glimpse to the
Yeah.
energy that's here. You can hear all the noise and the cheering coming out where the speeches are going on. We're going to bring you more, and so thanks for tuning into another episode of America Uncanceled.